Hello, friends. It's Friday, which means it's time for Margaritas with Marguerita Cheng, CFP Pro. You are going to love today's fascinating guest. Brian is the co-founder and GP of REFASHIONed Ventures. And I'm not even going to pretend to butcher his name. I'm going to let you guys think that. I'm Hope Katz-Gibbs, Rita's publicist and founder of Incandescent Public Relations, where we are more than proud to produce Rita's show, Margaritas with Marguerita, on our media channels, incandescentradio.com and incandescent.tv. I am coming from the new corporate headquarters of Incandescent here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's been quite a ride the last year, and here we are finally grounded where we have lots of really great stuff coming. But that's for another day. Right now, Rita, I can't wait to hear what you and Brian have to talk about supply chain technology. It could be the next thing that makes us all rich or something like that. So take it away, you guys.
Well, thank you so much. And that's right. Supply chain technology is the biggest opportunity in our lifetime. In fact, it is so exciting that we are devoting today's program entirely to this topic with our special guest, Brian Laung Aoaeh, co-founder and GP of REFASHIOND Ventures. So, Brian, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about supply chains and technology and innovation. And I have to warn you, because if you don't rein me, then we could be here till tomorrow.
No, that is certainly okay. In our conversation before we launched the show, I said this topic is so important to me personally and professionally. My firstborn child graduated with a degree in supply chain management and a minor in sustainability. So that's a good point to kick off our conversation. What is a supply chain and why are they so important?
So the easiest way to think about a supply chain, right, the thing that everyone ought to, is that a supply chain is the network that enables the production of anything that any one of us ever use. If you use anything, there is an extensive network of organizations, companies that makes the production of that thing, the transportation of that thing to you in whatever context that thing is possible. And that's what we support. Obviously, based on the description I gave, that means that sometimes supply chains are very local to where we live or where we work. And sometimes they're international, right? Because the components, the raw materials, they're combined into the final. So that's what it's about. It turns out that contrary to popular, the things that we use don't just magically fall out of the sky. There's a lot of work behind the scene that produces.
No, I love that. In fact, my daughter said the thing about supply chain management, you kind of take things for granted. You don't realize how important it is until you don't get that package.
Exactly. The joke I crack is the joke I crack these days, and it's easy to laugh about. Hindsight, the collective panic over toilet that we all experienced in the early days of the pandemic, right? Most of the time, we take toilet roll for granted. Like, who worries about where toilet roll come from? But during the pandemic, supply chains seized up all of toilet roll. Suddenly, the toilet roll supply chain became a topic of great interest to everyone.
No doubt. In fact, we would say there's panic buying in Costco, but panic selling in the stock market, right? We have two very distinct activities happen. So, in your opinion, why is there an opportunity to refashion or reinvent global supply chains?
So um, the big thing to understand, my opinion, is that supply chain and climate are two sides of the same cause and effect, so to speak. Climate change is the man-made supply chain is the cause, right? How we designed our supply chain, how we consumption patterns, etc. That's what's causing. So the big reason why we have an opportunity to invest in supply chains, because as you know, climate change is becoming worse. The worst predictions of scientists from decades actually coming past. And so we have no choice but to all. And so that's the opportunity. Bringing things closer to home, the pandemic has shown us, has taught us all in a very, say, painful what can happen when supply chains stop functioning the way that and then another factor to take into consideration, partly because of the pandemic, because of climate change, geopolitical tensions are increasing, right? And so what perhaps we would have taken for granted 20, 30 years ago, we can know. So the United States can assume that it's going to have great trading relationships, trading partners in Asia, right? A time may come when it's tested those cases. And so what's happening is that governments are starting to invest in rethinking their national policy. Companies are starting what their supply should be. And there are lots of technology startups born to meet. And then that's what.
So, can you share with our listeners and readers some examples of supply chain technology?
So I'm not going to mention any specific names because I try not I try not to turn these sorts of conversations into an advertisement. But one area, and so maybe what I'll do is I will talk about how we think about the opportunity for broad. So the first one is next generation logistics. And what that is, usually when people think supply chain, they think of the logistics and transportation side of supply. And so naturally, that is an area of great need for new innovation. And so there are a lot of startups that are a new product technology for transportation. And the way to think about it is if you are a company that manages 1,000, you're probably at the point where you need some help managing that, especially since more and more people are shopping online, more and more people want their goods delivered in 2 days or less, right? It's no longer can run that fleet of trucks the way that 10, 5. So you're looking for help. The other area is advanced materials. And the way to think about advanced materials is that there is so much waste that we create. And what would happen take that waste and get it into the product, right? And so whether it's textile uh, uh, waste from like used tires, so tires that have lived past their useful life, could we take that waste and return it to something? Obviously, if we're going to create new materials from waste, we probably have to come up with new ways of manufacturing these new, and so advanced manufacturing, third one. And then the fourth area, which is closely tied, especially next generation, that we create so much data and information, and the decisions that people make about supply chains, what to do in supply is driven by that. And so ways of capturing the storing, the processing, and helping in the face of that. So those are four broad ways.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. So it's not good enough to capture that data. You need to know what to do with that
You
data.
need to know what exactly you need to know what to do with it. And computers are really good if there is nothing that has changed, right? Computers are very great at saying, based on this information, this, and then human beings can step in when there's a change in the context or communicate the decision.
So now this is the most exciting question of them all. What is Refashion Ventures and how does Refashion Ventures approach this opportunity with supply chains?
So the four areas I just described, that's how we think about supply chain. And now I'll get it. But when you think of supply chain, you can think of supply chain management, which is how do I design that network from the perspective of government. You can think of supply chain logistics, transportation, storage, goods. And then you can think of supply chain finance, right? Which is I've designed my network, I've transported goods, I've made goods, etc., etc. Now everyone in the network get paid and money, information. And so that's the perspective we take. It turns out that the supply chain problem is the same problem, right? Connect production and consumption. And so if you understand the problem in one industry, you ought to understand it in others. And so our thinking is from the perspective of fund, invest in early stage technology startups that are creation, supply chain. And from the perspective of fund, the industry, the industry. The way we're going about it right now, this minute, the rolling fund on angel.
There's so much opportunity as you are aware. What do you find most exciting about investing in supply chain? What excites you the most?
So there are two things. One is, the idea that I talked about at the beginning, that climate change problem, which we have to, and supply chain, innovation, supply chain problem solved. The other is somewhat more personal. So as you know, West Africa, it's a village, and he had a form of arthritis which required that every had run around trying some pills so his pain subsided, sleep. And I didn't think much about it. Came to the United States, college, etc. Then in July 2018, as we had started fund, I was reading an article from the Swiss pharmaceutical company, and they were talking about pharmaceuticals. And if you've lived in Nigeria, pretty much life is like very environment. And they said because of inefficiencies in pharmaceutical supply, the cost to the final consumer of their goods are marked up 40%. And that made well, my live well below World Bank's poverty. And I said, man, when I was running around trying to find pills as a teacher, what you're telling me is that because of inefficiency in supply, those pills. And so I think of innovation in supply chains anywhere in as helping. And that is what gets that is building the fund has been a long journey. That's
Wow, that is so moving, so inspiring, and for sure, definitely your why. How can listeners and viewers learn more about supply chain technology and more about investing in this opportunity if
so
that's something they want to pursue?
if they go to our website, there's a lot there. There'll be a link where they can download a booklet, which we call "The World is a Supply Chain," explaining pieces. There'll be a link where they can fund. Um, if if they have some time and type my name to Google, there will there will be plenty of information. I write quite a bit on the topic, and I'm happy.
Brian, can you share the websites? And then we spoke about this in the beginning. You like to have a little bit of levity in your conversations. I like to, I like to also provide people um, with some wholesome humor myself.
Yeah.
So, what is the best way for people to find you? And
So
what is the website?
so they can go to refashion.com. And fashion is REFASHIOD. Refashion without it. The idea is that supply chains need refashion form. So refashion.com is the website. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. So, what you said to me really moved me. You think about solving supply chain issues as a way to improve the lives of many um, people in the world.
Yes.
Do you have any parting words that you'd like to share with us before I kick it back to Hope?
Our mantra. Our mantra is that the world is a supply chain. And I say that to remind people that the world is a mechanism for providing this thing. And when I said we could go on forever and ever, right? This could go into all sorts of philosophical, economic, political. It could go in all sorts of directions. But I think the parting words would be that the world is a supply chain, and I hope listeners think
Well, thank you so much. And back to you, Hope.
Oh, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. That's so fascinating. And I love how you take it from the personal to the global and then back again, right? That's how most people work. What really drives us. Because when we talk about supply chains, it's complicated. Like you said, setting up the fund was really complicated and understanding supply chains. I was telling you both before we got started, an editor of mine, Barry Lynn, when I used to write for his magazine, Global Business, he wrote a book called The Rise and Coming Fall of the Global Corporation. He was forecasting this more than a decade ago, that this was not sustainable, right? We can't work this way because not everyone works like America or, Ghana or however, wherever you are. So I give you tons of credit. We're thrilled to have you and your partner, Lisa, come on. In fact, we're hoping to get Lisa onto a panel to speak about supply chains. So thank you both. So now, Rita, again, next Friday, right, at 5 p.m. Eastern, we get to have another conversation. And this time, Marcus Turner will be coming on. He is with Education Associates and Affiliates. Tell us a little bit about him.
So, Marcus is going to be talking about education. One can say that's also an issue of supply chain, providing access to education, how you make sure you provide the right resources to your students and families. So he's going to be talking about that next week.
Excellent. Well, education, supply chain, it's all the same, right? How can we make the world a better place working one margarita at a time? Filled with sparkles and jacks or the real stuff. So thank you so much, Brian. And of course, thank you, Margarita. You are wonderful. And thank you to all of our listeners. We will see you next week on Facebook Live at 5 p.m. Eastern. Have a great weekend.